welcome back to the channel. I know that we're already a little bit into October, but I wanted to share my September reads with you guys. So first up on my September reads was City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab. This was the group read-along for Bookish Bash group for September. About every 3 months we're going to be doing a read-along, and so this was our first pick. And I'm a big fan of V.E. Schwab, Victoria Schwab, so I was really excited to read this and also have an excuse to pre-order it and buy it. And I really enjoyed this. This is a middle grade read. It is about a girl whose parents are ghost hunters, essentially, and she can actually see ghosts, but her parents don't know that. And they end up moving to Scotland, Edinburgh, to do a ghost hunting TV show, and some shenanigans ensue due to the haunted aspects of where they moved to. Overall, this was a really fun read. It is a middle grade, so the plot isn't overly complicated, but I really liked the characters and I really liked the world that was starting to get set up with this book, and I'm really interested to see where the series goes from here. Also, there's a Black Cat sidekick, which I'm just all about. Next up is a graphic novel, and that is Miss Marvel. I read this to do a review of it on my other channel, which I will link up for you guys. It is a spoiler-free review. But overall, my thoughts on this was that I was a little underwhelmed. I know that there were a lot of really good reviews for this. People were raving about it. I really like the representation that's in this. I think it's really great to have a Muslim superhero character. The aspects I didn't like about this was that I felt like it was a very generic superhero story. There wasn't really a lot of newness to it besides the diversity. And I just think that if you're going to diversify something and make it interesting in that aspect, other aspects need to be unique as well. I also personally did not really enjoy the art style of this. There were some pieces of it that I was just not a fan of, and overall, it was okay. I think I gave it about 3 stars, but I don't plan on continuing in the series. I have a ton of other graphic novels that I want to get to, and I'd rather spend my time on series that I might actually end up loving, or series I'm in the middle of that I know I already love. And you'll actually see a few of those on my October TBR, which should be up soon. Next up was an audiobook, and that was Jane Steele. This is a retelling of Jane Eyre. I've never read Jane Eyre, and I personally do not love Jane Austen. She's very hit or miss for me so far. I like Pride and Prejudice. I didn't like, what was it, Persuasion? I think I just did. Didn't like that one. But Jane Steele was really entertaining. It's a twist on Jane Eyre in the fact that Jane Steele ends up like murdering people who like wrong her in her life, and there's like a whole lot of things that happen, and it just made for such an interesting story, and I really liked her as a character, and I really liked just the book in general, and the audiobook was great. I did participate in one readathon this month, and that was Contemporary-a-thon. I will link my reading blog if you are interested in that. But the first book I read for that was Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. This completed these challenges of a dark/spooky read and also a non-traditional format. This is about a boy whose brother is shot with gun violence situation. It's not like an accidental shooting or anything. And he ends up taking this elevator to go avenge his brother's death, essentially, and he meets some characters along the way that changes his perspective about things. And this is written in a like poetry type format, which I was really questionable about first and ended up absolutely loving. I gave this 5 stars. I really enjoyed how it was told. It does have a couple of fantastical elements to it, so it's not like 100% a contemporary, but it still is, I think. But really enjoyed this, really highly recommend, and I definitely want to read more of his books now. The next one I read for Contemporary-a-thon was Before I Fall, which is about a girl who basically has a Groundhog Day situation, and she ends up repeating the day over and over again, and she's trying to figure out how to prevent her and her friends' deaths. The first half of this book I really liked. I thought it was really intriguing. I really liked how things were getting set up. And then the second half of this book really fell apart for me. I felt like there was a forced subplot romance. The main character ended up being an absolutely atrocious human, and I felt like it was a little too excused in the book, and also bad actions of other characters. And there were certain situations where it's like, oh, we're gonna have a makeout scene right after someone dies. Like, it was just really weird, and I really didn't like that, and I felt like they didn't give a good explanation of why she was repeating the day. Like, there was an explanation, but I just didn't personally find it very satisfying, and I was just meh. Those were actually the only two I completed during the Contemporary-a-thon week. I did start one other book, and then I ended up finishing it after Contemporary-a-thon ended, and that is They Both Die at the End by Adam Silveira. This completed the diversity challenge and also the initials in the title, cover, wherever, because my initials are BD, so both die, that works. So let's talk about this one. This was my first time reading an Adam Silveira. I was very excited about it. I've heard nothing but good things about his books, and I just had a really intriguing premise. Like, it's about these two boys. This world that they are in has this system called Deathcast, where you get a phone call on the day that you are going to die. You don't get any specifics, you just know you're gonna die that day. And these boys end up connecting through this app called the Last Friend app. So basically you can have a buddy for the day who's also dying that day. So you're going through a similar experience, can have the shared, you know, camaraderie, companionship, whatever. Super cool premise, right? However, I have a big beef with this in the fact that it is a sci-fi. It's marketed as contemporary, but this is 100% a sci-fi, and it really confuses me that it's not marketed as that. And with this being a sci-fi, in my opinion, the world building is very important. I am a big sci-fi fantasy person, and world building is one of those aspects I really look for good quality in, and the world building of this was honestly quite lazy. I found the ideas that were inserted, like the cool parts of it, were really interesting and intriguing, but when it comes down to the nitty-gritty of world building and you need to explain how certain things work in order to have a complete experience in the narrative, in my opinion, it really did not live up to expectations. Deathcast is never explained. In fact, there's a whole like paragraph where it explains that no one knows how they know that you're gonna die that day. That's just how it is. It's this big mystery, and I feel like that's just really lazy. Why would you come up with this really cool concept and then not put the effort behind it to explain why it exists? This is also told in several narratives or perspectives, point of views, whatever. You have the two main characters. I really liked both of their perspectives. They had their own very individual voices. I really enjoyed reading from both of them. They were very different people who led very different lives. I really connected with Mateo because he is just like a live life by the safety books, and I agree. But there were some other perspectives in here as well. You had some sprinklings of other characters who may or may not have gotten their Deathcast call that day, and just some circumstances that happened with them. And they did kind of interact with the main characters as well, and so that added an interesting piece to it. But towards the end, there were some more perspectives added in that interwove with the main characters a little bit more. And I found that when we got to the fruition of why we were getting those perspectives, it just felt pretty flat for me. It ended very abruptly. I understand what was implied. I understand the effect that it was supposed to give being so abrupt, but I just, again, found it lazy. I felt like it's like, ooh, this is a really cool thing, but I don't quite know how to tie a bow on it, so I'm just not going to. And that just really personally bothered me. And I'm overall just really disappointed that you create such a cool, interesting world and concept, and then you like barely touch on it. Like, there's some cool things they do throughout that has like special privileges for people who have gotten the call and things like that, but I just felt like this could have dove into some of the interesting aspects of this world so much more, and I wish we would have gotten that. And it's not like this is a series where you're going to get more books that kind of dive into that, at least not that I'm aware of any plans for that happening. This is a standalone as of right now. So overall, pretty underwhelmed. I understand why people like it, but I just personally don't get the hype. And before we close out this video, I want to discuss my TBR cleanout project. For those of you unaware, this is inspired by Books and Lala closet cleanout that she did last year. I will link her channel and that playlist for you down in the description. I am modifying it to go off of my Goodreads list instead of a closet of books. So the way my system works is for everything that was added to my Goodreads list 3 years ago to read, so September of 2015, I need to read by the end of September 2018, or it needs to come off my list. I get 2 saves, 1 standalone, 1 series per month. So for September, the two books that ended up popping up for this was The Golem and the Jinny, which I will link a picture for you. And the second one was Vicious by V.E. Schwab. Now these are both series, so I would have only been able to save one, and if you watched my September TBR, you know my plan was to read this one and save The Golem and the Jinny. However, I did not end up reading this one, so as Victoria Schwab is currently my favorite author, and I own this book, I'm going to choose to save this one, and I'm going to go ahead and take The Golem and the Jinny off my to-read list. That doesn't mean it can't come back onto my read list at some point in the future, but for now, it's coming off. And that wraps up everything that I read in September. Please link me your blogs, videos, etc. down below of your wrap-ups, or let me know what you thought of any of these books that I had on my list. I would love to chat with you about all the things. That's why I created this channel, so we can talk about things we love. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it and enjoy wrap-ups, and subscribe if you enjoy me. I do have book and beauty content on this channel if either or both of those things interest you. And other than that, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!